We all have a story. Your story is not my story, and my story is not yours. However, we can find joy, hope, and emotional healing even through our most painful moments in life. Let's walk and take this journey of healing together, one step at a time, because your story does not define you. Hey, y'all, and welcome back to Your Story Does Not Define You, the podcast. I am your host, Dr. Niesha, and I am super excited to have you guys join me once again on this platform. If this is your first time tuning in, I want to welcome you and say like and subscribe to this podcast. Share it with your friends, share it with your family. Anybody that you think that would benefit from this podcast, I would be super excited and grateful. For those of you that are tuning back in, I want to say welcome back again. I appreciate your continued support as we've been on this journey for over a year now. And I am super grateful every time that you take the opportunity to join me on Your Story Does Not Define You, the podcast. So y'all already know what's coming. My favorite thing to say every time I record an episode is just doing that little check-in to see how your vibe is today. And so for me, my vibe today is I'm a little tired. I can even say maybe a little exhausted. It's been a long week, been a busy week. I mean, definitely a lot of good things happening, but a lot of energy being poured out. So I will say I'm a little tired and a little exhausted today, but still grateful as always. So today I'm super excited because we are diving into something that's definitely universal, something that's tender, and something that many of us has tried to or have navigated through quietly, which is healing from the loss of a relationship, whether that's been a breakup, a divorce, or even just an unexpected ending of a friendship. And maybe even if you're still in that relationship and just kind of experiencing that slow unraveling of the connection between you and that person, maybe a connection that you thought was going to last forever, this episode is for you. And I am so excited because today I'm not going to be doing this by myself. I have a special guest that is going to be with us today, and her name is Miss Pamela Shakir. She's a licensed clinical social worker, as well as she focuses and specializes in relationship recovery. And y'all, Miss Pamela has so much experience. She does so much, and I am definitely going to give her the opportunity to kind of say a little bit more about herself. But I will say that she's an author. She's a relationship recovery coach. She's the owner and clinical director of her own practice. She's a mom. She's a grandma. And y'all, she look good. She don't look like she no grandma. She don't look like she is the age that she is. And she's not old, y'all. But she's beautiful. She's a beautiful person inside and out. And I'm super excited to have her here today. And together we're just going to explore what healing actually looks like when it comes to relationships. And we're going to look beyond the cliches, beyond the timelines, and beyond pretending that we're fine and knowing that deep down inside we're not. So can you guys join me in welcoming Miss Pamela Shakir? Thank you, Miss Pam, for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. And listen, when you were talking about all these things that I've been doing and who I am, I'm like, wait a minute, who is that girl? Because 20 years ago, 20 years ago, I wouldn't have never imagined to be who I am today. So I am grateful to God. And thank you so much for all the beautiful accolades. I appreciate that.
Thank you. You're welcome, Pam. And I am so excited to have you here. And can you tell us a little bit about your business? I know you are in Atlanta physically, but you also see and work in California too. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do, what you focus on when you're working with your clients, and just tell us a little bit more about yourself and even talk about your book.
Oh, yes. So just a little bit about me, because honestly, I really want to spend most of this time just trying to help someone out there. But just a little bit about me. I do have a private practice here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I focus on relationship recovery coaching. as well as specializing in depression and anxiety. We all know that there is always something that happens in our life. Life happens, and then there comes the symptoms. And so we know that depression and anxiety, that happens when someone experiences a loss of what we're going to talk about today. So that's a little bit about my business. As far as my book, I am an author of Creative Strategies, a self-guided journal to help you kick depression. And that book basically focused on just telling you a little bit about depression, your signs and symptoms, how you can get back on track and kick depression and not stay stuck.
Yes, I love it. I love it, y'all. And if you haven't got a copy of it, I encourage you to get a copy. And at the end of the podcast, we'll definitely have Miss Pam's handles in here so that way you guys can connect with her and get her book, and then also reach out to her if you need support. And so, Miss Pam, what is your vibe today?
You know what? My vibe is, I'm always lit, but because but I said today I'm gonna be real good, but I'm lit for Christ now, and yes. I'm so thankful now that I'm lit for Christ. But my vibe today is, you know what? I am really doing good. I've taken a lot of time to really work on myself, and I'm very intentional about having peace around me. And so today my vibe is, I'm happy. I'm doing good. Thank you for asking.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I love it. And y'all, she do not be playing about her peace and about her self-care. That's one thing I will say. So Miss Pam is not just a therapist, but she's also a friend of mine, and I've known her for many years. And that's one thing that I really admonish about her, is that she takes care of herself and she makes sure that she's intentional about her peace. And so I'm really, really, again, super excited to have her here today. So as we're going to get ready to kind of start this conversation, I know that relationship loss, a lot of people experience grief after a relationship loss. And I know that sometimes people often minimize the breakups and minimize losing a partner or a friendship. But a lot of things change when we experience some type of loss. And so, Miss Pam, I want to just start off, before we kind of dive in deep into the conversation, can you just share with us what actually counts as a relationship loss? What things can make up a relationship loss?
Well, a relationship loss, like you said earlier, it can be a friendship, or it can be a romantic partner, or it can even be a marriage, meaning as a marriage ended in divorce. And so those are the main specific losses that people usually experiences when it relates to relationship. Mm-hmm. Now, there are other losses that do make us feel sad, and we do experience some grief and loss. But I know today we're going to focus on the main thing at hand is the relationship loss of a person that you spent a lifetime with. Maybe some of you may have been in a short-term relationship, and some of you may have not had a long-term relationship with someone, but it's still a loss. I always say a loss is a loss. Yes. So that is what I would define as a relationship loss.
Okay, good. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And yes, like one of the things, people often feel like there's no recovery after a loss, or either, rebuilding after that loss is something that's really hard. And so in losing a relationship, as we already kind of stated, it's not easy. And a lot of people describe heartbreak as physical pain. Can you just elaborate into a little bit more detail, Miss Pam, about what that looks like? What happens in our body when we experience physical pain after a breakup?
Yes, I sure will. And this is a really important, thing that we need to discuss, because everyone's loss looks a little different. But it's like, Niesha, when we go into a breakup or a relationship loss, it's like our body immediately goes into the survival mode.
Right.
It's almost like you are under water and you're trying your best to pedal and push yourself above water, but these waves just keep coming over your head.
Right.
And so immediately, what's activated after that survival mode kicks in is our fight and flight responses.
Right.
And I always kind of like break up the fight response, kind of like when the breakup has taken place, you know, you start going back to that person, you know, kind of like demanding answers, like what happened, you know, why, you know, you want this relationship to end. Sometimes people argue, you know, they go back and forth, you know, stating their parts, and then sometimes they're pleading, trying to get the other person to see that they don't want this relationship to end, or the other person is pleading, stating why they must walk away. And then our flight responses is, you know, kind of like what a lot of I would say the younger people do now is they'll block you real quick.
Right. Don't play, period.
When I say they will block you real quick. And so that's a part of our flight response. It's like, okay, I don't want to, you know, deal with this. I'm mad at you. You walking away from me, or you cheated on me. So let me go ahead and block you, so you can't get a hold to me. And blocking is not always a bad thing. I want to say that it's not always a bad thing. Right. But, you know, they do a lot of the blocking because they're avoiding the ex, basically. They don't want they don't want that person to get a hold to them, because that, you know, that the loss has occurred, and now they're realizing that there's no recovery, there's no reconcile. And so sometimes when you get angry, you know, sometimes people's flight response may be that they may pick up and move out of town. Right. You know, they may say, I don't want to be in the same town with this person, and so I don't want to see them. I want to avoid anything that reminds me of them, and so I'm out. Or they may go around their home and find things that person gave them, you know, gifts, and they might get rid of those gifts. Right. Or, you know, they might not go around those old friends that they shared and places that they went, because it's painful. It reminds them of that person. And so they're, you know, like I said, they're fighting for their life. You know, you know, we think of a breakup as like pain, but this can be like a physical pain. It can almost feel like, you know, being hit by a car and not knowing that this car is getting ready to hit you. It's just like, boom, you know, because these relationship losses sometimes are unexpected. Like we don't always know that someone does not want to go into the future with us. And so that immediately triggers grief and loss. Right. Absolutely. And believe it or not, grief and loss doesn't just only lie when you lose a spouse. Grief and loss happens when a relationship ends as well. Yes. And so your emotions kind of bounce back and forth. You might initially not believe that the relationship is over because you share so much history together. Right. You created all this life together. You may have children together. And even if you don't have children together, you still have created memories with this person. Right. And so you kind of think like, oh no, you know, we've gone through this before. We can kind of get through it. Yeah. But as time moves forward, Dr. Niesha, we start to realize that, okay, no, this relationship really is ending. It be over, Yes. And so, you know, some of us may say, well, you know what, maybe if I, you know, work on myself and maybe if I start going to the gym, or maybe if I fix my hair a certain way, or, you know, maybe if I spend more quality time with that person, they will want to reconcile and get back together. And I have to caution you on that. If you're going to the gym to work out on your body because you want to be healthy, that is so good. That's awesome. But if you think that's going to make someone come back and love you the way you want to be loved and want the relationship again, that may not always be the case. Right. And so, you know, a lot of times we kind of fall into that bargaining, but then Dr. Niesha, when we really realize that the relationship is over, that's when we have to sit in those shadows of depression, that pain, and that can sometimes the pain can be so unbearable to where in severe cases is cause people to be diagnosed with what's called broken heart syndrome.
Right.
And that is when your body has experienced so much stress to the level where it's extreme, to where you start having symptoms like a heart attack.
Right.
And so we have to be really careful while we're going through a loss, while we're going through grief and loss, because you don't want to get too sad to where your body gets impacted and your immune system start to weakening, and then you start to having health challenges.
Right.
Because as we know, just from our background, we know that when depression sets in, it changes our mood. We may not feel, we may not feel our best some days.
That's true.
We may feel like we can't sleep. We're up just kind of thinking about what took place, or we may not feel as hungry as we would normally feel.
Right.
Or we may start to overeat, which sometimes people do. I call it comfort eating.
Right.
When your emotions is all over the place, you may grab, that extra snack or that extra plate and eat because you feel like it's gonna make you feel better in the moment.
Right.
But longevity is not good for you. And then sometimes when you're going through a loss, sometimes you can't even really think clearly like you would normally think. Would you agree with that?
No, I totally agree. I mean, you said so many good things. And I want to kind of go back to when you talk about just like, when you realize that it's really over and you just feel that pain, like you said, it's almost like you got hit by a truck.
Like a truck.
And it kind of just reminded me of a relationship that I was in. I was in a long-term relationship prior to me being married. And in that relationship, I thought I was going to be with that person forever.
Mm-hmm.
And we shared a lot of memories and a lot of years together. And as we started going, downward, and, I started realizing, okay, you know what, at some point I have to make a decision because things aren't going the way that I wanted them to go. Mm-hmm. And it was really hard to sit with that truth that we're really not going to be together anymore, especially after, like you mentioned, like, okay, maybe having our challenges, we've got through this before, okay, and we keep going. But when you really get to the place where you have to make a decision that, okay, do I want this or do I don't want this? But then also sitting with that truth of, we're really not going to be together anymore. It was painful. It was hard. It was like my heart ached. And so that definitely resonated with me.
Yeah, definitely. And I totally understand that because me coming out of my divorce, I had to make a decision on how, I always tell people how you show up in a relationship is how people will treat you. And so I had to not only look at, the memories and different things like that. And I had to, not only look at the fact that, okay, this marriage is not working, but I have 3 daughters and I love them so much. And I don't never want them to think that is a way that you allow a person to treat you. I never want them to allow anyone to purposely mistreat them. Sometimes you can't control what people do, but what you can control is your decision to stay in the situation and how you're going to handle it when you find out something is not right.
Right. That is so true. Very, very, very true. And I agree with that. And so I just kind of want to maybe shift gears a little bit, because a lot of times when people actually lose the relationship or the relationship is over, you and I both know that grief, it doesn't have a time frame to it. It can last longer for some people. It could be shorter for some people. So when people feel like they should be over it by now, like, why am I still here? What would you want them to know if they're in that space when they think they should be over it by now, but they feel like they're still kind of struggling with the grief and loss process?
Yeah, that's really good. So here's what I would say about that. Our mind is always in like overload or overriding our emotions because we want to be better. But one thing about the heart loves who it loves.
Right.
And so I don't care how many degrees you go and get. I don't care how long you stay in school. I don't care if you're the vice president of a company, or if you are working at a convenience store. Everyone is going to have to go through the grief. You're going to have to go through the pain.
Right,
now, a lot of times, Dr. Niesha, some people might try to go around the pain. And when I say go around the pain, they may try to quickly get in another relationship, or they might say, you know what, I'm gonna go hang out with friends every weekend, or they might indulge in things that they shouldn't indulge in. That's not healthy for them. It doesn't really help your healing process. But when you look back, sometimes you make more of a mess of the situation because you're not allowing yourself to go through the pain. It takes time, to get over someone you truly love.
That's true.
And
yeah,
and like you said earlier, when you build routines with this person, you had scheduled plans. Some of us even woke up every morning for years, with this person, and you just can't quite get over someone like that. Even if you jump into something else, you're still going to be thinking about that person. And I look at it like this. Now, in a situationship, you may be able to, that's kind of like a light switch. You can kind of click that relationship off and on because your heart is not really, in that person. You're not really into that person. Yeah, you know the situation, and you just kind of like maybe just passing time. I'm not saying that's a good situation, but I know sometimes that happens.
Yes.
You like that person, the next month you may not be with them. It's no big issue. But when you love someone deeply, it's going to take time, Dr. Niesha. So I tell people, don't rush the process. Allow your time to feel what you feel. Grieve the loss. Miss that person. It's okay to miss them, but you can miss them, Dr. Niesha, but you still have to know what's best for you and take the first step to move forward towards your healing.
Right. And that was so good. And the healing and the recovery part, I feel like, is where people really struggle, because again, it's still painful. And oftentimes I talk to people about just how it hurts to heal. It hurts to heal. And, when I'm having conversations with people about just healing from different traumas, is that people run away from that healing piece of things because it is so painful to have to go through that. And so you talked about, when you miss the person. And I know sometimes it's not just about missing the person, but when we experience relationship loss, sometimes I feel like people lose themselves in the relationship loss, or they lose a version of themselves. So can you just expound on how does identity play into heartbreak? Because I felt like I've lost a piece of me during a relationship loss that I had to work back on finding that part of me and that identity part of me. So how does identity play into heartbreak?
Yes, that is a great question. And when I tell you that it is very, how should I say, it goes hand in hand with heartbreak. And this is not everyone's situation, So I would say this, as a woman, we visualize ourselves with this person. Like we visualize what our life is going to look like. We visualize if we want to have children with this person, or if we have children, we visualize how we're going to raise our children together. We are, especially if you love, you pour yourself deeply into this person because you are wanting to be the best woman that you can be. True. And especially if you are a wife and you really respect that title, you want to take really good care of your husband. And sometimes we lose ourselves in that relationship. And it could be a couple of things. It could be that maybe when we get in a relationship, with a man, or if it's a man getting into a relationship with a woman,
right.
if that person has a little bit, I would just say a little bit, this is not every situation, but if that person has a little bit of narcissistic traits or tendencies, you're going to be so focused on them and not what you want and what you need, because
that's so true.
It's a struggle when you're in a relationship with someone that want the relationship to be all about them. It's all about them and what they want, and they don't stop for a moment to say, hey, what is it that you really want? But when you are in a relationship with a man or a woman that love you the same way you love them, they will pour into you. They will push you a little bit towards your goals. They will be on that sideline cheering you. And so in those healthy relationships, you don't lose yourself. Or if they see you losing pieces of you, they will speak life back into you. They'll pour that love back into you and remind you, like, hey, don't lose yourself in this. Yeah, you are my wife, or yes, you are my girlfriend, or yes, you are my husband, or you're my boyfriend, but I don't want you to lose yourself in this situation. So sometimes, when we are not in the best relationships, we will lose ourselves because we're pouring too much into them. And this is one thing that I see sometime, and I think I've been guilty of this before in the past when I was a young woman. We sometimes see ourselves already at the altar with this person. We can be dating them or courting them to get, courting them, trying to, see who they are. Do we like them? Are we a great fit? And before we can find out if we really like them, we're already at the altar. So we have to sometimes slow down a little bit and figure out, do I really like this person? Do they have the character and the qualities that I need, in a relationship, in a spouse, or in a boyfriend or a girlfriend? We just have to slow down a little bit so we don't let our emotions jump too far ahead.
Right. That is so true. And that was so good. And I want to kind of go back, and I want you to kind of expound a little bit more on, you talked about if we're in a relationship with somebody that has narcissistic traits, that kind of like want to center the relationship around themselves and what's best for them, but not considering their partner and the person that they're with. And so what I see oftentimes when I'm doing couples therapy is that a lot of that exists, where somebody in the relationship is so focused on themselves and what's the best for them, and not really considering their person, and not really helping them to, like you mentioned, kind of like, get past spaces in their life that they're trying to work on or get better in, and they're not kind of like being supportive. So can you just expand on that a little bit? Because I know that is a common theme that I've seen just like in marriages and, just relationships in general. So can you touch on that a little bit more? How can people get through that, or how can people find themselves or rediscover themselves again when they're with somebody that has those narcissistic traits?
Yeah. So you know what, that is it is really challenging when you're in a relationship with someone that has those traits, because most of the time, Dr. Niesha, they don't even realize that they're taking all of the space. They're struggling with their own identity. They're struggling with their own self-esteem. And so they really rely on someone, I guess pretty much like always giving them praises, and always pouring into them, and always doing everything for them. And that's why they make everything about them, because they honestly really don't know how to love that other person like they need to be loved, because they have so many wounds that has not been healed through childhood, and that's a whole nother topic.
Yes, it is.
But they would have to do some real deep self-reflection and processing and therapy, because when you have that type of I don't want to get too clinical, but when you have those type of issues as being a narcissistic, having narcissistic traits, you really have to process that in therapy. That's not anything that you can just say, okay, I'm narcissistic, so let me process this with my husband or my wife.
Right.
I strongly encourage that if that person is aware that they do have that, to go ahead and process that in therapy, because some of that stuff, like I said, is childhood, and the person you with, it's not their fault that you experience that. And sometimes we take things out on people when we haven't healed our inner child. And so as far as a person that's in a relationship and they know that they're dealing with a spouse or their partner that has this, make sure you take really good care of yourself and make sure you speak up for your needs, because sometimes you'll be afraid in those relationships to speak up for your needs, because sometimes it's not always a healthy relationship. And so you'll often dim your light so that you can keep the peace. And you'll find yourself walking on eggshells, and that is not healthy to do that. But I do understand that you have to tread lightly so that you can, make sure you take care of yourself. But that's what I would say if you are the person in the relationship dealing with that. Make sure you take good care of yourself. And if you feel like you've lost yourself and you need some extra support, it is definitely okay for you to go to therapy as well.
Right. And that's definitely one thing I was going to add to that, is that, like you mentioned, that inner child piece is a whole, like you said, a whole nother conversation within itself. However, it's one of the key dynamics when it comes to healing, whether you're doing individual healing, whether you're doing couples healing, healing from relationship, just healing from trauma in general. And oftentimes I encourage people when I'm doing, couples therapy to also explore doing individual therapy at the same time, because it's really hard. I've noticed it's really hard for people when sometimes we're doing the work in a therapy room with couples, that their individual stuff constantly continues to show up. And it's not even necessarily a relationship issue. It's somebody's individual stuff that keeps peeking into the relationship. And so it's so important for people to make sure that while they're doing any type of like relational coaching or relational counseling, to always address their own individual stuff too, because it's so important, because it's a big factor into the piece of the puzzle, and a lot of people don't realize that. And sometimes when I have to share, I've had to be very candid and honest with people in the therapy room when I've noticed somebody that, was a narcissistic, abusive person or has those narcissistic traits, and just be honest with them and tell them, and sometimes people can receive it and other times people don't. And so again, that's why it's so important for people to do that inner work on their individual selves, because especially if you're in a part where you're working on the relationship, you're still in the relationship and you want the relationship to get better, you can't ignore your individual stuff. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, that is so good. And I was thinking more as you were saying about your individual stuff that you take into a relationship. That is why it's so huge to heal before you go into another relationship. Take some time to figure out, okay, what are these negative family patterns? What are the family patterns I inherited? How was love introduced to me? Because oftentimes I hear some men say, oh, well, it was common in my family for another man in my family to have multiple, girlfriends, or have a wife and have a woman on the side, because that's how love was introduced to them. And so they didn't know, of course, as you grow and you get older, you do know that it's not right, but it was introduced to them. And so they thought that, okay, it's normal. It's okay. As long as I'm taking care of this is okay. I saw that in my family. I'm not saying all of the men in my family, but some of the men in my family, that's what they did, and I don't know where they got it from, because as long as I can recall, my grandfather and my grandmother were married. They had all their children together. I've never known of my grandfather to step outside of the relationship. never known of my grandmother to step outside the relationship, but I did see some of the male on my mom's side of the family display that type of behavior. And so for me, growing up, although I saw that negative pattern, I knew that I didn't like it, Dr. Niesha, and I told myself, like, I don't want that. Now, did that happen to me? Yes, that did happen to me. I ended up experiencing, infidelity in my marriage. And so you can inherit these patterns, or you can be exposed to them and say that you don't want it, but you really have to learn relationship skills, because if you don't learn relationship skills and learning who you are and what you want and you don't want, you will end up in those relationships, and then you'll look up and then it's repeating the same history.
Right.
It's
that
repeating.
Is true. Those cycles, those generational cycles that repeat, and they happen more than what people think they are. And that just made me kind of think about, I was in an abusive relationship before, and I remember I was one of those people that was like, I'm not going to ever be in an abusive relationship. Like, I wish I would let somebody, put their hands on me or talk to me a certain kind of way. And in my family home, like, years ago when I was younger, there was some domestic abuse in my home, that I seen my parents go through. And I found myself in that relationship. And I was one of those people for sure that I knew I wasn't going to be dealing with that. And I ended up dealing with it. And it took me a while to get out of it. Not because I didn't know that I should leave. It was just hard, and
it's hard.
Talking about the cycle of abuse, that's a whole nother conversation within itself. So I definitely can relate to what you said. And so, I know sometimes, like, when people reflect back on the relationship, so when they're just kind of thinking about the loss of the relationship, they're thinking about what worked, what didn't work. And sometimes, people fall into that shame or feeling like they failed. Or again, like you talked about the bargaining piece as we go through the stages of grief, when you get stuck with those feelings of guilt of, if I had did this, or if I should have said this, or if we didn't do this, then maybe we would still be together. So how can people kind of do some reflection back on the relationship? Because I don't think reflection is a bad thing. I think it could be a good thing, because we should be reflecting back to push us forward. But sometimes people get stuck in those cycles, again, dealing with that guilt and that shame. So what can somebody do to kind of help support them, that instead of reflecting back to fall into guilt and shame, but reflect back to push themselves forward?
Yeah, and you already pretty much kind of answer that, because like you said, reflection is good, and I want you guys to hear me with a compassionate heart.
Right.
You have not failed yourself if you are reflecting back on what worked and what didn't work. I think that you should do that, because if you don't reflect back on what didn't work, you will find yourself dating the same person, different face, different name.
Right.
And so take the time to reflect on, okay, this is what I liked about him or her, and this is what I didn't like about him and her. And then that helps you in the long run, like we just talked about. It helps you to not fall in those same patterns. It also helps you to make better decisions in the long run when you're ready and you feel like you've healed some, because healing is ongoing, and you're going to probably continue to heal. Even when you get with the next person, you may have moments where you have a flashback and think about that other person. And this is not in a disrespectful way, like you're wishing y'all are back together. Not like that, but it's just that because you're going to always be healing, you may have moments where you kind of think back on that person. And, that's a part of healing. That doesn't take away from the relationship you're entering in or the one that you're in. It's a part of your journey of you processing. But take the time to process the pain. This helps you to pinpoint, okay, when this happened, that's when this was a turn. That's when the relationship shifted. Okay, let me be mindful of this. Or it helps you to identify the red flags. I just spoke recently, Dr. Niesha, I did a video on us being mindful of the 9 fruits of the Spirit. And I'm not going to go too deep into that, but if you want to go back and and researched that out. It's in the Bible in the book of Galatians chapter 5 and 22.
Right.
But anyways, these fruits of the Spirit helps you to kind of like look at the person's character to rule out the red flags and pinpoint what went wrong in that relationship.
Right.
And then in the end, knowing what worked in this relationship, it helps you to recreate healthy habits.
Right,
you know,
right,
you
true.
start to recognize the relationship that's right for you and the one that's not right for you.
Oh, I love that. I love that. This is so good. This is a good this is so good. This is a good conversation. And I'm really loving it. So I know people out there are really loving this conversation because this is so good. So I want to talk about, because you brought up a lot of good things. You talked about the fruit of the Spirit. You talked about red flags and things that people should look for, you know, as they start thinking about, you know, maybe exploring a new relationship. But I want to talk a little bit about boundaries. And so I know that sometimes, you know, you mentioned earlier about people that can, you know, go through a relationship loss and they can be done and it's over and it's like, okay, I'm blocking you and I have nothing else to say to you. And some people can do it moving real quick. But what about those people?
Back in the day, we didn't have block back in the day. We had where I used to go to the store, Home Depot, and I'm like, I'm going to change these locks.
Right, and change your phone.
Change that phone number, pay that $15. He put this key in this doorknob, he's not going to get in. These doorknobs are going to be changed.
Right. Girl, let me tell you.
A couple of weeks later, he was back in the house, so it's like not even worth it.
Right. Just wasting your time. Wasting my time,
but that's when I didn't know who I was as a woman, and I was young, and just, you know, I always say I was a little silly, but yeah, I remember that was my block back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think we did all been there, because I wasn't one of those people that can block and be like, throw up the peace sign, deuces, I'm out. Because I might do it for about 2 days, but like you said, the third day I'm going to be right back talking or whatever the case may be. So I want to talk about boundaries when it comes to those relationships that are hard to decide if you want to stay in connection with the person or not. So how do you handle that? Like when you want to consider, like, okay, should I still be this person's, I mean, you say friend, but sometimes you think like, well, is this person really my friend? Because if they was my friend, why would they do me the way that they did me? So I know that's it's like a sticky line. So how do you create those boundaries and decide, okay, should I stay connected with this person or should I not stay connected with this person?
Yeah, you know what? Initially, when you go through the breakup, your heart wants to stay connected because you have that hope. You're hoping, you know, that you guys are going to be able to figure things out. And then, you know, like you said, as you go into the loss and it sets in and you find out they've moved on and maybe you haven't moved on, you know, you haven't moved on as quick as they have.
Right.
Here's what I tell people, because you have to be really careful with that part about the contact. It just depends on because, you know, we know that if you in another new relationship, that person may not want you to stay in contact with your ex. Okay.
So
and staying in contact with your ex, it keeps you stuck. It keeps you from really being able to fully move forward like you need to. But in some situations, you know, like you and I have shared, we've been married to someone that we had children with.
Right.
You have to keep some type of connection because of the kids, you know. And so within respect, if you're in a relationship or if they're in a relationship, then I would say that connection has to be, you know, within setting some boundaries of, you know, what kind of conversations you having, how long you know, that conversation is lasting, what the topics are about, you know, that's what I will say. But I always tell people, Dr. Niesha, it's okay to walk in love with your ex. And what I mean by that is you can be kind and respectful. That doesn't mean that you sneak in, you know, going over to their house or anything like that, but kind of respectful. If you see them out in community, hey, how you doing? Okay, good, take care. Like that, because you're not enemies.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, you're not enemies. You once loved this person before, it just didn't work out. You realize they wasn't your person, and that is okay. That is okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I love
that. Yeah, so it just depends on the situation, why the connection needs to take place. I know for me, when I was going through a divorce, we still had financial obligations. Mm-hmm. And so that was another reason, why I'm not saying we was in touch all the time, but you may have to kind of like tighten up a couple of things, before you can fully, move forward. But like I said, you have to be really careful, because if you really want the true love to find you that you deserve and that you want, you have to close the door on the ex and focus on rebuilding and rediscovering yourself, so that when that person comes along, you're not stuck. And if you feel stuck, I always tell people in therapy, you can get a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle, and you can put on one side pros and the other side cons. Simple exercise.
Right.
Yeah, and then you ask yourself, you list all the pros of why you think you need to stay connected to that person.
Right.
And then you list all the cons, all of the disadvantages, all the things that may not be good for you to stay in contact with that person. And then you let the paper what's in writing.
Right.
You look at it and then you determine, what's the best thing for you. And I know that seems simple, but sometimes it really does work.
Ooh, it's hard. Because it's hard. I've challenged a few people to just do pros and cons about if they want to stay in the relationship, and that cons list is outweighing that pros. But when I tell you, it's hard for them to say, okay, well, maybe I should leave. They still trying to find reasons of why they need to stay.
Yeah,
I've been there for sure.
Been there. I think because you love them, and that's the thing about, you have to be honest with yourself. When you love someone, I still love this person.
Right.
If you're a believer, go to God. Lord, I still love him. I don't know why I love him. I'm not sure why I can't move forward. I need you to help me to move forward, so I don't miss out on the person that you have designed for me.
Right. That's true.
Yeah,
because the heart can be deceitful at times. So I definitely agree with, like you said, if you believe God, just pray and ask him to kind of help you and support you through that, because I believe he hears you and he'll answer your prayer. So for someone who feels like they'll never trust or love again, what words of hope can you offer to them, Pam?
Ooh, that is a good one too. So, yes, life has happened and it hurt you deeply. I totally understand that.
Right.
But hear me for a moment. Imagine a good person coming along who can love you properly. There's no hidden agendas. They can make you laugh, make you feel like no other person has ever made you feel. They make you feel like no one else exists in the room but you. They see you without judgment. They honor you even in your absence.
That's good.
Isn't that good?
That's good.
Then ask yourself this. Just think about this. Are you willing to give all of that up for one person who didn't have the capacity to lead you?
Wow. They
didn't have the relationship skills needed to show up for you. Okay, let me go a little bit deeper. Could it be that the loss was a setup? Could it be that the loss was a setup so that you can find true love, or so that your true love can come into your life? Right. And every tear you cried over that person, every tear you silently cried, will be non-existent with this new person in your life.
Right.
Could it be that all of this can happen to you if you took a chance on love, or if you didn't take a chance on love and you said, I don't know if I can love again, you lose out.
Right. Wow.
You lose out. So this is what I would say. I will offer this hope to you, to someone out there that's listening. think about it. Even when those negative thoughts creep up in your mind, trying to dispel your future, trying to make you feel like you can't have the love that you deserve, or nobody is going to love you the way you want to be loved, or you should be loved. I want you to speak life back into yourself every time that negative thought creeps up.
Right.
And I want you to remind yourself daily that you will love again.
Yes.
And that the next time you love, it will be the right kind of love, because you're going to learn through this loss, and you're going to gain more wisdom through this breakup.
Right.
And from that wisdom, you're going to know how to choose right. It's not only just the man coming to choose the woman. Yes,
right.
I totally believe the Bible that he that findeth a wife findeth a good thing. That is true. I believe that. But, ladies, we also have to, sit back and say, okay, is this person right for me?
Right,
is this person good for me? And I want you to also, take this into consideration. Every relationship is not going to be perfect.
Right.
Okay. It's not going to be perfect, but it can be the kind of love that makes you feel safe.
Right.
And that's important.
Ooh, that's so true. That's true. Relationships take work. It is
a job.
It's a job, but people have to be willing to do the work once they put themselves in that space, And I often tell people that, people didn't make it to 50 years of marriage because it was a happy day in the park. Like if you talk to anybody that has been married for a long period of time, they will tell you they've experienced ups and downs. And so to kind of just support what you said, we have the opportunity to love again and to trust again. But we just need to go into new relationships wiser, gaining the wisdom that we've learned along the way. And like you said, okay, even though somebody finds us and thinks that, oh, you're my wife, you're the person that I'm supposed to be with, we still, as a woman, have the opportunity to check the facts, like, explore and look, and it can go,
know them by their fruit.
Yes, and it can go both ways, whether it's, a male or female looking for their significant other. So that was so good. That was deep, and that was really good. And so one last thing, as we kind of start inching to wrapping up, I want to, because we both know that healing is not linear. We know that healing doesn't look like a straight line. 1 week we might be good, and then the next week we'll probably fall apart. We might cry, we might be good for weeks, and then it could be a roller coaster. And healing is a journey, a journey that is a lifelong thing. So we're constantly learning and we're constantly healing as we go. But when somebody is ready to begin rebuilding, and they're ready and they feel like, you know what, I'm good. I feel pretty good about this loss. They've kind of gotten to a place where they're ready to start just kind of working on themselves, reconnecting to their identity and their interests, and just kind of working on that sense of self and that self-love. What steps do you recommend? Like, how can somebody walk fully in that space of reclaiming their identity and reclaiming their self-love and interest in who they are?
Oh, yes. And that's going to be huge. And you are going to have to think, work on that as you start to get stronger, once you get through the grief, and you work through the pain, rebuilding, putting yourself back together, because remember, you want to be able to move forward into your future and start living again. So I always tell people the first thing that you have to do is you really have to be honest about how you feel and where you are at. Right. That's the first step to rebuilding and getting back to yourself. Just being honest about, where you're at. Also, just taking some time to think about the things that you like. I can recall back a time, after I got divorced and I was still going through my healing process, for many years I would go to a restaurant and let's say they brought my food out and something wasn't quite right on it, but, I didn't want to let them know that it was something wrong with it. So I wouldn't send the food back. And so some years after that, I realized that I didn't know how to speak up for myself. I was dismissing my needs and my wants. And this, and I had to learn how to start speaking up for myself and my wants. And so I would also say that to you listeners out there, that you found yourself in a relationship and you didn't know how to speak up for yourself, that is something that you can start working on with just that simple thing, like what I recognize is ordering my food and me getting my food and it wasn't right. If you order a hamburger and let's say they put cheese on it and you don't like cheese, it's okay to send it back and speak up for yourself and say, you know what, I really don't want cheese on this hamburger. You know, little things like that we have to start learning how to speak up for ourselves, because you'll forget it when you're when you're in an unhealthy relationship.
Yes,
also, I would say this is that you should figure out what it is that you want to do in life. What is it? Who is it that you want to become, and do it? I always tell people, do it scared. There's no way to say, I'm going to wait until I'm ready and then I'm going to be encouraged to do it. I would just say, do it, even if you're scared, and do it without even knowing the full story. You know, you don't really know how it's going to unfold. You don't know.
Yeah, wow, that's good. That was so good. And that was a good analogy that you brought up. And I think that is great advice, and for the people that are listening, like, gravitate to that, because simple things like, if your food wasn't right, to kind of get used to speaking up for yourself and embracing what your needs are is something that will go a long way. So I'm glad you shared that analogy. This has been such a good conversation. A lot of good nuggets and a lot of good wisdom that you've been feeding out to us, Pam. And so as we wrap up, I want to offer to see if you have any additional things that you just may want to add, to kind of like, if there's somebody out there that's listening to this episode and they might be saying, I hear you, but they're in that space where they're hurting and, they're trying to begin that healing journey, and it's hard for them to kind of maybe gravitate to some of the things that we're saying. I want you to just give us a final message that you could offer to somebody out there. And then I would also like you to talk a little bit about your coaching services that you offer for relationship coaching.
Sure. So we all have to be honest with ourselves when we go through this loss. And like we said, timelines are different, but you're going to find yourself some days where you're happy, and then you may have a day where you're not happy and you are literally soaking in between the creases of your mattress, just ruminating on those thoughts and thinking back on what happened and what didn't go well and all of that, what you typically go through. I really want you to be intentional about taking good care of yourself. You're going to always hear me talk about self-care. It is vital to your body that you take really good care of yourself. And so with loss, some people, struggle with getting up, taking a shower. Sometimes they struggle with brushing their teeth or getting up, eating healthy. We tend to grab something quick, a snack, and that may not always be the best thing for you. So be really intentional about taking good care of yourself, drinking plenty of water, getting your fluids in, learn what boundaries you need to set, and don't be afraid to set those boundaries. If these boundaries are good for you and the other person don't like that, you need to disconnect from them, and you might need to block them or not answer your ex's calls because you're healing. Take that time to heal and do what it is that you need to do. And if they truly care for you, they will understand. If they don't understand that you need to set these boundaries, you have to remember that you got to take good care of you first in order for you to be able to go out and be, good for the world. And lastly, I would say this: engage in some activities that make you happy. Go for a ride, go for a bike ride, get out of the house and go to the park. If you need to go to the beach, I love the beach. I don't know what it is about water and being near it. It replenishes me. But whatever your thing is, go out and do it, what you need to do to make you happy.
I love that.
Yeah. And so as far as my relationship coaching, I just recently launched that. And so I'll just tell you really quickly, you can go to my website, www.pamelashakirlcsw.com, and send me an inquiry if you want some relationship coaching. But what I'm offering right now is I'm offering couples coaching. I am offering individual coaching. And I'm also offering what's called a Reclaiming Yourself. And that's basically helping people with their journey slowly back to rediscovering who they are after a loss. And that loss can be like a relationship, or that loss can be of you losing your spouse. And then I also offer a relationship check-in. And that basically is a coaching support to kind of help you maintain healthy boundaries and also personal growth.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I'm super, super, super excited about this new layer of support that you've added to what you're already doing. Like, I mean, you guys, she's an amazing therapist. She's an amazing person inside and out, like I had mentioned earlier. And if you are looking for somebody to help you navigate through just your relationship journey, whether you're still in the relationship or whether you're going through the loss of a relationship, I want to highly encourage you to please get connected to Miss Pamela Shakir. All of her handles are in the description, so please definitely check her out. And again, I just want to say thank you so, so, so much for taking the time to spend this hour with me and just, provide such great wisdom and knowledge that you've given us today. I truly, truly, truly appreciate it.
Yeah, and I want to just say one thing before we go. Sure. I want to give you your flowers. And the reason why I want to give you your flowers is you have helped me so much. And even when I didn't know that the seed was being planted for me to become a therapist and to have my own private practice, you were there and you were saying in that parking lot one day after work, come on, no, you can come over here with me. And let me tell you, and I'll help you and I'll show you this. So I will say this to people out there. If you've ever had someone to help you, always give them their flowers. I mean, Dr. Niesha is just a beautiful person. You know, at times she's quiet and she's private, but if you really get to know her, you're going to see her heart. And when she loves you, she really loves you. It's not a pretend. It's not fake. She really do love you. And so thank you so much for always being a constant friend and always being there to help and support me and guiding me along the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for that. That just really, truly touched my heart. And just really, truly warmed my spirit this morning. You got me a little teary-eyed over here.
Listen, I tell you both together. You started before me, but we kind of started together. Yes, but she started before me, and I appreciate that support. I do.
Yeah, and it's so great, like when we can glean and learn from each other. And I think that's kind of like, that's the space to be, a good space to be in, because there's so many people that have the same professions, but people have different perspectives and different approaches that they use when helping people. And one of the things that I tell people, I encourage everybody that I know that are, wants to be a therapist. I'm like, do it, go for it. I will support you in any way that I can, because as many therapists out there, none of us are the same. We all have a different approach. We all have a different perspective. Sometimes things are similar, but one person can't reach the world. And so that's the beauty of when there's a profession and there's so many different people. It's the same thing as going to the doctor. You have doctors that specialize in certain things, and you might have doctors that's really good, but either way it goes, you're not going to go to two doctors and they're going to be exactly the same. And one person might like this doctor, but the other person don't like that person. They might gravitate towards the other. And so that's the beauty in being able to glean again and learn from each other. And I really, really appreciate you and just the conversations that we can have. We've worked together in many areas, and I feel like we've learned from each other. So I want to say thank you. I appreciate your kindness, your, kind words. And then I also want to just appreciate you for being the woman that you are.
No, and for
the opportunity to be connected.
Yeah, definitely. We have to do this more often. We got to come back another time and go a little bit more deeper. But thank you so much for having me. Agree. I appreciate it.
Yes, you're very welcome. It's been a pleasure and an honor to have you. And as we just kind of get ready to kind of close out this episode, I just want to again just remind all those listeners out there, um, if you've listened to this episode, I really just want to remind you that healing from the loss of a relationship or just any type of loss, the healing process is definitely not linear. You'll hear me say it so many times that we're not going to travel a straight road. And it's honestly, truly a journey. And it's a lifelong journey that we have to constantly be on, because even when we find ourselves being in better spaces, that doesn't mean that life won't continue to happen. Life will continue to happen, and we have to remember to go back and revisit those tools and strategies that we've learned along the way. And so I just want to remind you that, remember, you're learning, you're growing, and you are allowed to take as much time as you need. Don't ever let anybody try to rush you. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you should be over the relationship right now. When it comes to healing from loss, it is not a one and done thing, and it's not an individual cutout that we can apply to everybody. Everybody's journey looks different. And just know that you're not starting over. You're just starting from your experience, and use your experience to learn and grow and to make better decisions as you move through the future. And so, once again, I just want to say thank you to all of you for tuning in with me today on this episode. And again, if this episode resonated with you, please take the time, share it with your friends, share it with your village, share it with your coworkers, because somebody can benefit from this podcast. And always know that I'm here cheering you on. We are resilient together. We're growing together. We're in this together. And until next time, Dr. Niesha here. Thank you all.